I met this guy at a quaint little restaurant on a quiet Tuesday evening. The ambience was warm, with soft music playing in the background and the aroma of freshly baked bread wafting through the air. He was seated a few tables away, a confident yet unassuming gentleman. His presence was magnetic, and when he approached me, his charisma was undeniable. "Hi," he said with a smile that reached his deep, kind eyes. "I couldn't help but notice you sitting here. Would you mind if I joined you?" His confidence was refreshing, and I found myself nodding before I could think twice. We talked about everything and nothing: books, travel, life. He was witty, intelligent, and attentive. When it was time to leave, he insisted on paying for my food, a gesture that felt both thoughtful and genuine. But then, as he reached for his phone to take my contact, I saw it, an e-telephone. My heart sank. I couldn't help but compare it to the sleek iPhone 13 Pro my ex-boyfriend had gifted me. I tried to mask my disappointment and gave him my number anyway, but a seed of doubt had been planted. The next day he called to introduce himself. His voice was warm, steady, and full of sincerity. We spoke for a while, and I learned that he worked for a travel and tour company. He invited me to dinner at a cozy eatery, and despite my reservations, I agreed. Over dinner, he expressed his interest in me. He spoke with such clarity and focus, his dreams and ambitions laid bare. Yet there it was again, that e-telephone on the table, a stark reminder of the material gap I couldn't ignore. I told him I'd think about his proposal. Days later, when he asked for my decision, I turned him down. "You're not my type," I said, avoiding his gaze. "What's your type?" he asked, his voice calm but curious. "Someone who's a bit up to my standard," I replied hesitantly. When he pressed further, I reluctantly mentioned the phone. He didn't argue or defend himself. He simply nodded and said, "I understand." That was the last I heard from him for a month. At first, I felt relieved. But as the days turned into weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about him. His kindness, his respect, the way he listened. No one had ever treated me like that before. I realized how shallow my judgment had been, and regret began to gnaw at me. I kept hoping he'd call, that he'd try to convince me to give him a chance. But he never did. Finally, I swallowed my pride and called him. When he answered, his tone was polite but distant. "I'm sorry," he said, after I reminded him who I was. I didn't recognize the number. We spoke briefly, and when I asked if he could save my contact and check up on me, he agreed without much enthusiasm. I started viewing his WhatsApp statuses and learned more about his life. He drove a car, something I hadn't known. Intrigued, I began texting and calling him more often. Eventually, I told him I wanted to visit him to show him something. When I arrived at his house, I got the shock of my life. Wait, before we continue deeper into this story, make sure to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell. You don't want to miss more captivating true life stories like this one. God bless you as you do so. Now let's get back to our story. When I arrived at his house, I got the shock of my life. It was a beautiful, spacious home, tastefully decorated with modern furniture and thoughtful details. There were computers, bookshelves lined with novels, and, to my surprise, 2 iPhones neatly placed on a desk. "Why do you always use the i-telephone?" I asked, unable to hide my curiosity. He smiled. "It's my personal phone. The others are for business." His answer humbled me. Here was a man who didn't feel the need to flaunt his wealth or possessions. He was grounded, practical, and secure in who he was. I struggled to find the courage to say what I had come to say. "I'm sorry," I finally blurted out. "I judged you unfairly. I was wrong." He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "I wasn't angry," he said simply. "Let me drop you off." As the days passed, his silence weighed heavily on me. I was always the one initiating contact, and his responses were polite but distant. 3 weeks later, I couldn't take it anymore. "Do you even want me anymore?" I asked during one of our conversations. His response hit me like a punch to the gut. "Do you think you look like you want to be wanted?" I was shattered. His words forced me to confront the truth about myself. My superficiality, my insecurities, my mistakes. I realized I had hurt someone who had only shown me kindness and respect. Now I'm determined to make things right. I've started small, showing genuine interest in his work, asking about his day, and making an effort to be there for him. I've also begun reflecting on my own values and priorities, working to become someone who deserves the love and respect he's capable of giving. I don't know if I'll ever win back his heart, but I'm willing to try. Because now I see what I didn't before. Love isn't about phones or cars or material things. It's about kindness, respect, and connection, and he's taught me that in the most humbling way possible. Please, how do I make up for my mistake? How do I fix this? He looks like someone who really wants to settle down. His intentions were real, I messed up. Please help me. Let me win my future husband's heart back. I will be in the comments. Please advise me on what to do.